Well, welcome back to the Energy Sovereignty Project and our closeout for our second week in May. And we've got, you can probably hear, if you listen close, we've got a little bit of summer thunder showers. The last several days have been kind of off again, on again, raining. And this brings up, this is why we're doing this project, to show the difference between having one or two power walls and having a large amount of capacity to be able to get past when you have 1 or 2 days like this. Today we have about 23 or so, 24. We can check the production when we get back to the studio. But we have about 23, 24 kilowatt hours of production for today. So basically it'll cover the home's usage. And our goal, our target today was 40%. And the reason for that is that we have to get past today, and then tomorrow is going to be about 80% cloud cover, also rainy. But it should give us an opportunity then to put something back. We should get a little bit more than what the home uses tomorrow. And so the day after that, we're scheduled to have about 40% cloud cover or so a little bit of a break, followed then by a couple of days of rainy weather. Now, the extended forecast is always a little difficult to pull a forecast up here so you can see that. But the extended forecast is always a little dicey, so you can't really rely on that near the end of the week. We'll see if that maybe turns into some severe rain, or maybe it'll go away. We'll see. But for today, the goal was 40% to get us past those 2 days. We hit over 60%. And so what I'm doing then is I'm just going to go ahead and put the remainder in the car, bring the system percentage down to 40%. That'll get us past the next couple of days. And then we'll come back to this in next week's update to see where we're at. But as far as this past week goes, very good week of production, a very heavy driving over the course of the previous weekend. We'll go over that back in the studio. This also gave us an opportunity to see that turnaround when you're using a vehicle for heavy use. What does that do? If you need to go ahead and deplete it completely over the course of a weekend, how rapidly can you keep up? And we ran into the max number of miles that we could do. I did 400 miles of driving over the course of a weekend. Now 300 of that, the system was actually able to keep up, basically 300 miles in 3 days. And then on the fourth day, tapped out. And so we'll head back over to the studio now and we'll take a look at some of those numbers. Welcome back to the studio. Well, we've had quite a bit going on this week, so let's get to it. This week was marked by some very heavy driving, and then as you saw in the previous video, we had a little excitement as well as we lost our inverter. So let's go ahead and open up on the 8th, where we left off last week. Good production. Ending the day in 78% charge. Not much of a gain today, as this was one of the high use days that we get every once in a while, where we draw quite a bit of power while we're creating it. And so didn't get much of an increase. We got 53.1 kilowatt hours of production, and home use was 63.4 in total. And then we'll pull up the notes. So we were able to put a decent amount of range in the car, and we knew that the following day we were going to have a long round trip to the Bay Area. And one thing I remember about today was that it was interesting that we had as much production as we did, because it was about as overcast as it could get and not rain. And so then here we have the 9th, and as you can see here, this was our maintenance day where we lost our inverter. Started the day at 56% charge in the system, and actually managed to get a couple of hours of good production before the system actually failed. I think, remember serves, we were about 65% when it actually cut out just before noon. And hats off to the SunWorks crew. They did a great job. They were able to get it replaced right away. So quick, in fact, that we didn't even lose the entire day's production. We were only out of commission for, I think, a little over 4 hours. And that was able to put a bit of a charge in the system there, as you can see. Ended the evening at 72% total solar day. And that even allowed us to put a little charge in the car, as you see here in the notes. 20 kilowatt hours to the car. Not much else to add other than what you see here. We were forecast to have decent weather for the next few days, and like you can see, you'll be able to see here, we needed it. And so here we have the 10th. So starting the day at 31% on the system. We needed to fully charge the car for a round trip to the Bay Area. And so let you digest that for a minute. And then here we have the notes. 39 kilowatt hours to the car. And sometimes these notes can get a little confusing, so let me walk you through what you're seeing here. So you see that the car starts off the day at 126 miles. And so that's the range on the car, obviously, prior to charging. And so I needed to charge it up to full to get to the Bay Area and back. And so I charged the car to 100% using that 39 kilowatt hours that's shown. And that brought the range to around 250 miles on the car. And then I started my trip. And so the end of the day mileage that you see there, in this case 134 miles at 53%, that was recorded in the Bay Area where I stayed the night. And so then that brings us to the 11th, and starting the day at 14% system charge. And that was, due to the 39 kilowatt hours we put to the vehicle the previous day, as well as the usual drop that we get overnight. And so then we had a good production day of about 60 kilowatt hours, so that was able to recoup a lot of that. And again, the total solar day percentage represents the fact that upon returning home I had to put some charge back into the car. I got back around noon, and so here's the notes. So 32 kilowatt hours to the vehicle, ending the day with 121 miles available and just under 50% charge. But here's where it gets interesting. So as you see in the notes, I've got a problem. I just made a round trip to the Bay Area, and now I've been invited to go to a baseball game in San Francisco. So am I going to have enough freeboard in the system to be able to, charge to 100% and be able to make it round trip on sunlight? Well, here we have the 12th, and as you can see, nope. And I also compounded my error with being stupid and letting the vehicle start charging before I got up. And so the result of that was we had depleted further the system than I had anticipated overnight. And so then by the time I checked my app in the morning, I found that I'd completely depleted the system. It depleted in some point in the early morning hours, and then it actually wound up drawing a little bit from the grid. So that was disappointing, but it is what it is. So and then so here pull up the notes, and again, this is where it would have been really handy to have increased communication between the car and the system. And since they're both talking to Tesla's mothership, it should theoretically be possible for Tesla to implement that in the future, allow some more methods of setting the car for its charging so that it will query the power walls and not deplete them. So then starting off the day with 133 miles, arrived in the Bay Area with about 30 miles remaining. And so then when I supercharged, I kept the navigation screen up, and that allowed me to monitor the amount of charge that I'm putting into the car so that I can stop it when I've got just enough miles to get back to the house. And that's what I did, knowing that I was going to be heading home after the game. Also, I didn't want to have to stop to charge afterwards, so I actually did the supercharging. Pull this up here. I actually did the supercharging in the morning when I arrived. And so again, 38 kilowatt hours to the car from the supercharger, and the navigation route planner. It's very good. It allows you to charge just to the amount that you need to charge. And again, it's very accurate. If it wasn't accurate, you wouldn't be able to do that. And on long trips, that would be very annoying. Currently, if you're trying to plan a long trip where you have multiple supercharger hops, it's very easy to depend on what the car is telling you. You arrive at a supercharger, you charge for X amount of time, and then you'll be able to see which charge you want to make. Sometimes you want to skip one. Sometimes you want to charge more completely if you're stopped at a supercharger where you're going to do a meal or something of that nature, so you'll charge a little bit longer so that then maybe you'll arrive at your destination rather than having to make one more stop. All those kinds of things here. So let's pull up the notes for the 12th again here. As you can see, there was both that morning 5 kilowatt hours that put into the car that resulted in drawing some power from the grid unnecessarily, as well as that 13 kilowatt hours we put back in the vehicle right when we returned home, just so we didn't leave the car in a fully discharged state overnight. And then we get to the 13th. And so it's an opportunity for the car to recover a little bit. Starting the day at 10%, we peaked at around 60% just prior to total solar day, and wound up putting 20 kilowatt hours into the car. So that's pretty standard stuff there. And then here's the notes. Ending the day with both the vehicle and the system around 30% charge. Again, pretty standard stuff, nothing really to see there. And so then here we have the 14th. Another decent day of production. It's pretty overcast, but still got 51.8 kilowatt hours to bring our total solar day to 63%. I'll just see that for a minute too. And then we'll bring up the notes here. So the funny thing that I noticed here that was worth mentioning is that this might have actually had something to do with how the charging was done the previous day after the heavy driving. As you recall, I didn't put as much charge into the battery as I usually do when returning home. It wasn't much available. So instead I charged it up in 2 blocks of about 20 kilowatt hours each. And so because of this, it seems like the battery, after it took that charge, it relaxed a little bit and maybe warmed up internally. I'm not really sure what went on, but as you can see, it actually increased. So that was kind of an interesting thing, that it actually, even though I left the car overnight, that it actually increased its charge. And so the biggest takeaway from today, however, is that there was no charge put in the vehicle. And here's why. So this is the forecast screenshot that was taken on the 13th. And so you can see the 14th was showing at 28% overcast and with rain likely for the following day. And so with that in mind, our target charge for the 14th on the system came back up to that 60% point where we'd been operating when we were back a few weeks more in that shoulder period where we had to make sure that if you get some rainy days coming in, some cloudy days coming in, that you have enough stored up to in the batteries to make it through those blocks of 2 or 3 days. And so that's what we did. And so then that brings us to the 15th. And so then obviously our target percentage for the 15th is 40%. Again, we only have to get through today and then the following day. And because we actually did have enough production to cover the home use, we were able to follow our protocol and charge the vehicle until total solar day percentage was at that 40%. Missed it a little bit here, got 39, but you get the idea. And so then here's the forecast for the 15th. And as you can see, we have rain today, as you saw in our opening shot of the video. Rain predicted for tomorrow, but some excess production is also predicted. And then that will be followed by some decent production Friday, and then that should get us past the following couple of days. And so as we close out here with the notes, you can see that the summer thunderstorms are going to give the system a little bit of a workout over the next couple of days. But it's always nice to leave these updates with a little something to look forward to. And that closes this week out. And so as always, thanks for following along with all of this. If you're new here and enjoy this kind of a thing, please feel free to like and subscribe. And again, we do encourage replying and let us know how we're doing. If there's any other tests that you might like to see us perform. The content of the Energy Sovereignty Project is very much driven by the responses that we get, because everybody who's following this, for the most part, is engaged in it because they have systems of their own or they're planning systems in the future. And so all of this information is very pertinent to what it is they're doing. And so with that, I wish you all the best of luck with your systems, and we will see you next week.